Hi everyone, welcome back to the Shelves Have Eyes. I'm Phantom, and today we will be continuing with Tarn Tuesdays with this Tarn-Adjacent Tuesday. Transformers Legacy Evolution Bludgeon, Comic Universe Bludgeon. This is a minor retool and recolor of the Tarn mold to make an equally colossal Decepticon in terms of popularity. Bludgeon started out in G1 as a pretender, and then in IDW made quite a name for himself as kind of being a weird maverick. I mean, I will go into extensive lore on Bludgeon later on, but suffice to say, he is a weird mad scientist in IDW. Perhaps not so much in terms of the actual science. He is supposedly a scientist in IDW, a student of Shockwave, and then by virtue of that also a student of G-Axis, and then becomes a student of G-Axis, and becomes again a student of Shockwave. It's a little bit confusing, but this is the first reuse of the Tarn mold. Tarn was a legacy figure. This is a legacy evolution, so this is the next line. Apparently, there were a bit of, or there were rather bits of tooling done to the Tarn mold so that Bludgeon's retool was baked in. Those are primarily details on his chest crest piece, and also his knees. And apparently this version of Bludgeon is based on his appearance in the Transformers Annual, where I don't even remember what he did, but I'm sure that the extensive lore section is going to fill us all in. So how about we get right to it, shall we? Okay, so this is a standard Legacy Evolution package. They have foregone a lot of the details from the previous. I got this from Amazon, so there is this label here. I apologize for that. It gets in the way of this superb artist rendering of Bludgeon as he appeared. I'm going to assume that Marcelo Matare did the art here, because he did do a lot of art, or Don Figueroa. There is a QR code that shows his tech specs, which I am not going to do. And on the side, we have part of the mural for this particular line's big up-and-comers. You can see here that the big Titan-class figure here for this line was the Nemesis. You can see it here, kind of looming with a Quintesson ship. And there's Armada Optimus and Laser Optimus Prime there, which I believe Laser Optimus Prime was a reissue in this line. I honestly can't keep track of them very well. You see some of the Insecticons here, a lot of the Junkions, and Hotshot from Armada. So on the back, the big gimmick for this line was the Evo Fusion, which apparently means that his fusion cannons can link together into a larger gun, which, of course, Tarn already was capable of doing, so I don't quite know where this Evo Fusion nonsense came from. But as I said, Bludgeon has made several appearances in IDW at this point in time. Actually, now that I think about it, I think IDW had finished by this particular point in time. But this rendering of him is specifically as he appeared in the Transformers Annual. So I will have to go back to the comic and see exactly how this pairs up. But for right now, we are going to just judge this on the figure itself. So how about we take this out of the box? I am not a person that keeps hold of their boxes and hoards them. So once this is out of the package is gone. For me. There's nothing else inside the box. We have him, we have his instructions, the read me first, which is standard in these. Under the flap here, we have his accessories, which are his two fusion cannons and his sword. Let's take that out first. And let's free bludgeon here. The instructions are fairly... I believe he's actually in the same position as Tarn was in his instructions. I still have Tarn's instructions right here, so really, yeah, the only difference is the sword in his hand. But other than that, he is placed exactly the same, which makes sense because these are renderings, not actual pictures. So what we get in the little package are his 2 fusion cannon pieces, which we will put in here. These actually fit much more snugly into this assembly than either of the 2 Tarn molds that we've looked at. And his sword is suitably different from the Tarn Cyberverse Tarn mold. It is molded in 2 different colors, or rather painted, this metallic silver and molded in this maroon color. So a lot more interesting looking than the pure purple energy blade that Cyberverse Tarn had in the Target multi-pack. And just like Tarn, his back piece is not actually fit snugly into the back of his assembly. You just need to push that in, the pins into the molds, and there you go. Now for Bludgeon, the big question is, do you want Bludgeon to have a double fusion cannon on his arm like Tarn, or do you want him to have these 2 suspended pylons, which seem more in line with how he was shown in the comic? Maybe not quite that large, though. It's kind of odd that they did it that way. That looks a little bit better, I guess, and it kind of gives him the little hanging flanges that he kind of had in the comics, both G1 and IDW. So here we have him in robot mode, and I really cannot say anything different than Tarn. He feels about the same weight as the original Tarn. He does not feel as heavy as the Cyberverse Tarn. But maybe that's just me imagining things. I really don't know. I will say that unlike Cyberverse Tarn, which was very drab, a very drab recolor, and didn't really seem to do much for the mold itself, I would say that Bludgeon really does do a lot with what he's given here. The orange and bright military green and maroon painting on him is excellent and really drives him, makes him look much more attractive than Cyberverse Tarn, who I just felt was just too plain. But all those things aside, he is the exact same figure. So he has the exact same articulation and range of motion that you would expect from a figure of this age. Let me just put his sword into his hand. He looks good. He looks good. He poses well. If we wanted to, we could put him in a variety of action poses here that seem much more in line with his appearances in the comic. I don't know if anyone was given the edict that Bludgeon's comic appearance should mirror Tarn, in that he has similar kibble. He has his Tarn's shoulder treads. He has Tarn's feet and legs, particularly his thighs. From what I was reading, apparently his thighs were pre-molded to look like Bludgeon more than they looked like Tarn, as well as details on his chest crest, and also these little details here on his kneecaps were apparently pre-baked into the mold because they knew that they were going to make Bludgeon from it. He has a huge open mouth, and he's ready to lead the Monstructor 6 into righteous battle against those who would forestall Cybertronian evolution, apparently. All told, I'm actually really digging this. He looks really nice. Something about the fact that Tarn could always put his turret on his back and have these two cannons coming out from behind his head, but there was just never any need to do that with Tarn because he never did that. Tarn never did that. I think maybe he used a double fusion cannon once, but usually like connected his two fusion cannons together into a larger gun. But he generally just had the double fusion cannon strapped to his arm. So it wouldn't make sense for Bludgeon to have that because Bludgeon is not a... Bludgeon wouldn't take pot shots from afar. He would get up close and personal because he is all about close quarters fighting. With his sword and with everything else. Just overwhelming power. The face sculpt is very nice, actually. It's really evocative. He is snarling. He has traces of the cybernetic wiring in his mouth, which is really nice. I like his stylized samurai head, crest piece. It looks really nice. And all told, I'm really, really liking this. There's something about putting the fusion cannons on his back that kind of changes the silhouette of the figure, and I'm all for it. I remember in the comics he did have these two pylons coming up from behind his head in his comic appearance, and I always wondered what those were, and I think maybe he uses the cannons at one point, but yeah, this does a lot to differentiate him from Tarn, and his color scheme is practically amazing. I mean, it's really attractive. It's really attractive. I love the way it looks, actually. It's a great representation of the character. And I know that a lot of people don't think very well of Bludgeon, IDW Bludgeon, because they love his actual skull head from G1 Marvel Comics. And to that I say, you know, for a character that is predominantly recognized as his pretender shell and not the robot inside, why would you try to adapt pretender shells if you're just trying to do something new with the character? Like, Bludgeon is recognized for his skull face, his samurai armor, his sword, and his color scheme. When I first saw Bludgeon show up in the comics as his inner robot, I was like going, who is this? This isn't Bludgeon. And then he got into his pretender shell, and I'm like going, okay, now I get it. I did not have a Bludgeon toy growing up. But as it stands, I really like this. It retains all of the color palette of the pretender shell and gives you this kind of absolutely demonic samurai Oni look to his face, which somehow seems more fitting than a skull, because I mean, why would Transformers have a notion of what a skull is? Because their endoskeletons are built differently from humans. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is really a win. It's excellent. I think it really works for his proportions. It feels sturdy. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm really happy with it, and I think that it does enough with color and placement of accessories to differentiate it from Tarn. So this really is a Tarn-Adjacent Tuesday. So let's take a look at him in his vehicle mode, shall we? Oh, I see a problem here already. His head crest doesn't really want to go into the hollow. Even kind of moving his head doesn't really help that. What if I went sideways? Yeah, it still kind of hit something, but it's better than it was before, I guess. So let's see if that will actually stick, shall we? All right, so here we are. This is Bludgeon in his tank mode, which, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it is Tarn's tank mode. Not enough was done to differentiate it, I feel, from the original mold version. But also, we never see Bludgeon transform into his alternate mode, so we have no idea what it looks like. So it could be this. It could just be Shockwave or G-Axis decided, you know what? You're going to have the exact same mold as the ultimate Decepticon soldier, Tarn. And so then they just reformatted him like this. It's entirely plausible given the fact that G-Axis reformatted himself into Starscream's body at the end of Dark Cybertron. So, you know, anything goes here. Completely aside from that, once again, the color scheme really does do a lot for the figure. The fact that all of the green looks like it is the undercarriage, the under armor of this mode, and the orange is just kind of slapped on top, really does a lot, I think. It works very well. I am kind of really upset about the head, though. His crest makes it so that he can't put his head down normally, and so you kind of have to slide it in sideways. Then I tried to turn it around, but it didn't really work very well because that greasy sausage fingers. So it is what it is. I mean, you can't really see it, so I'm not really terribly sad about that. And also, I mean, the tank has no wheels. It has a suggestion of wheels, but no actual wheels. So it does lie flat. That's really all you're looking for. And I've got to say, I really like it. This is a great example of Hasbro doing a repaint that really brings out a lot in the figure just by changing colors and paint applications. In much the same way that I said about the original Tarn figure, I loved the fact that the lighter purple plastic and the gold and the lilac and silver were very nice accents that kind of brought out a lot in the figure. And likewise, I will say that Bludgeon does the exact same thing. His paint applications really bring out a lot of the mold that, yeah, you could see it before in Tarn, but emphasis is placed on in different locations. And he does come with the sword, and it looks better than Cyberverse Tarn's sword. So, you know what? I'd say this is a win. So, now that we've done both robot and alt mode, is this a tank? I guess it's a tank. How about we do a little bit of lore? Now, because lore has a tendency to get away from me now in Tarn, the other episodes of Tarn Tuesdays, actually the first two episodes of Tarn Tuesdays, this will be lore only on IDW Bludgeon. It will not deal with G1 Bludgeon, which I plan on doing later on for a different Bludgeon toy. So, how about we roll that? Impatient, sick, bloodthirsty, and twisted are the best adjectives to describe Bludgeon. Only one of the Decepticons' mad scientists, and a low-ranked one at that, following the likes of G-Axis, Shockwave, Thunderwing, and Bombshell. For all of his strength and persona, Bludgeon's craft seldom works, and he's also a bit smitten by the more mystical aspects of science, which makes him about as effective a scientist as you can imagine, relegating him to muscle for the deeper thinkers. He's a psychopathic child pulling the wings or legs off insects and convincing himself he's performing great feats of science. Bludgeon first made his name after kidnapping Ratchet, following Megatron's orders to locate one of the ancient Titans, Metroplex. Bludgeon insisted on a prisoner swap for Ratchet in the middle of the Rust Spot, an area he knew only Alpha Trion knew a path through, but ended up thwarted by Orion Pax. After the exodus from Cybertron following Thunderwing, The master of Metallicato continued his hunt for Metroplex into deep space, until a betrayal by Thundercracker caused his ship to waltz into an Autobot ambush. Are you sensing a trend yet? At an indeterminate point during the Great War, Bludgeon cobbled together an army of deviants and half-forms that somehow constituted an egregious war crime to the Autobots. Despite his lack of any success, Megatron ordered Bludgeon and his cohorts, who may or may not have been members of said deviants and/or half-forms, to investigate Shockwave's experimental projects after the chief scientist of the Decepticons was entombed by the Dinobots on prehistoric Earth. The force was comprised of Finback, Skullgrin, Iguanus, and Bombburst, all of whom shared Bludgeon's kooky spiritual beliefs. What started as scientific curiosity when the group discovered Shockwave's Regenesis program, itself a brain-melting proposition due to multiple and frequent retcons during the IDW 2005 run, quickly gave way to superstitious cult behavior when they came across the body of Thunderwing. Thunderwing was a Decepticon scientist who, according to multiple sources including nascent Autobot Jetfire, was an absolute nutcase. During the war, Thunderwing tried to alert both sides to the damage the conflict was having on Cybertron itself, warning that if the war continued as it was, the entire planet would quickly become uninhabitable. His warnings fell on deaf ears, and he quickly devolved into complete insanity. In an attempt to correct the energy damage and environmental effects on the planet, he decided to create a polydermal grafting process, wherein cultivated organic tissue was fused to Cybertronian biology as a protective shell. If that sounds like Pretender technology mixed with the Beast Wars concept of skin shielding components from the effects of energon exposure, you'd be absolutely correct. Unfortunately, as Thunderwing was completely mental, his polydermal grafting succeeded in making him nigh invulnerable and far more powerful than he had been, with a minor side effect of total insanity. Becoming a destructive force of nature with no higher reasoning, the mad Decepticon scientist, or rather one of the many mad Decepticon scientists, rampaged across the planet and caused the energy apocalypse he attempted to prevent. So naturally, Bludgeon worshipped him, and upon discovering his mindless body, decided that Thunderwing was the second coming of Cybertron itself. The Thunderwing cult Bludgeon formed with his inner circle came to believe that using Shockwave's Ultra Energon from Earth, Genesis Ore 13, they could revive the sleeping Holocaust. Somehow, the plan also involved subjecting themselves to polydermal grafting to power up, so they also restarted Thunderwing's original lab. Bludgeon also created the Excess Cradle, a machine he believed could control Thunderwing using mental commands and pre-programmed subroutines in the Ultra Pretender's blank mind. Together, the cult believed that they could use Thunderwing to sacrifice planets and then it would somehow revitalize Cybertron. Like all of Bludgeon's plans, there were critical issues missing to get from point A to point B. The cult succeeded in harvesting Ultra Energon and awakening Thunderwing, sending him to devastate the planet Nebulos. See the lore videos on Darkwind for more on that particular campaign, before a group of Autobots assaulted Bludgeon's secret base on Cybertron. Bludgeon set Thunderwing on autopilot and decided to get into his quasi-biological carapace so he could be suitably powerful to confront the assaulting force. Needless to say, like all his other plans, he cut corners or ignored serious safety issues, resulting in the grafting process going awry. When Optimus Prime and the Wreckers breached the lab, they found the Decepticon cult leader trying to tear off his own biological armored face. It was believed that the shell still held Bludgeon's mind, but said mind was trapped in an agonizing feedback loop due to an improperly aligned mental connection with his shell. Bludgeon next appeared as a disconnected spark, held in Garrus 9's rig, while his body was stored elsewhere in the penitentiary. During the Dead Universe's expansion operation, G-Axis activated the sparkless shell using an Axis cradle, although fighting on too many fronts caused the ancient Cybertronians' focus to shift, and Bludgeon's body was quickly returned to storage. His next appearance is kind of weird continuity-wise. He appeared back in his body with his mind mostly intact, in command of the Decepticon warship Torment, crewed by the Monstructor 6. During the Surge, a coordinated Decepticon attack on Autobot facilities all over the galaxy that resulted in Optimus grievously injured and leading into the All Hail Megatron series, the Torment attacked the Trion, a ship carrying the Wreckers. While he failed to win against the Autobots, the chase resulted in the Trion getting caught by a fleet of Decepticons over Cybertron and falling to the surface. However, at what point did he escape Garrus 9? The Surge and the events of All Hail Megatron are said to occur over the period of about a year, 2008 to 2009. Overlord arrived at Garrus 9, killing the Decepticon forces under Skyquake, and took over at the beginning of the Surge, freeing all the Decepticon prisoners, presumably including Bludgeon. But we later find out that Shockwave, after removing the Achilles virus from Overlord after the Phase 6er took over Garrus 9, recruited 31 Decepticons to crew an escape ship who were all on the DJD's list. When the DJD came calling following radio silence from Skyquake, they found Shockwave's ship, and, after refusing to accept the 31 other names on the list instead of Shockwave, they were driven off by the Torment. So somewhere in there, Bludgeon was released, repaired, and put in command of a ship crewed by also repaired Monstructor parts, and chased the Trion to Cybertron. Then returned to Garrus 9 in order to drive off the DJD? We can imagine that perhaps there were a few months in between Overlord taking over and reactivating Shockwave, but why would he have released Bludgeon in the first place? Shockwave might have suggested it in order to have a contingency plan for once he left, but who repaired him and Monstructor? My money would be on Shockwave, but it's fully possible they were healed when Jaxus was remote controlling them, but we never get any real answers. It just seems like a lot to do in a small amount of time. Bludgeon next came into conflict with Orion Pax and Hardhead on the planet Arduria, where he had rescued Jaxus and set off with a mad ancient scientist in search of more Regenesis ores. He then fought Orion again in a temporally displaced battle that saw the two fighting through opposite ends of time until Bludgeon finally succeeded in capturing the time-controlling ore and escaping from the once Prime aboard Decepticon warlord Turmoil's ship. Together with Jaxus, Bludgeon then got in touch with one of his previous subordinates, Waspinator, who at one point succeeded in controlling a Titan, and the group tricked Orion to Gorlum Prime. Once Orion reactivated a dead Titan, Waspinator swiftly took control of it and used its space bridge to travel back to Cybertron, while Bludgeon and the others traveled via Turmoil's ship. Once they joined Shockwave and his minions, they began the Dark Cybertron plan, activating a chronal drive as the Ammonites invaded the planet. Bludgeon and his forces held Crystal City as Shockwave's plan ensued, driving back the crew of the Lost Light and mocking Skid's copied Metallicato skills, until he was defeated by a resurgent Optimus Prime as the Autobot leader returned from the dead universe. Bludgeon, unfortunately, survived the beating and escaped before Crystal City was consumed by Shockwave's singularity. What followed was a lot of machinations with insane spark experimentation and control of the Beast Titan Trypticon. Here he came into conflict with the newly discovered Camions. During a false flag operation that saw the destruction of a convoy of Camion Sparks and the death of Patrolbot Barricade, he was summarily defeated by Barricade's Camion Conjux Endura, Swift. He survived and reappeared wielding a Void Scepter to control Trypticon, and by extension other bots mutated by contact with the Titan's Energon, in a misguided attempt to use the Titan space bridge to conquer the universe. Are we sensing a trend here? When he commanded Trypticon to attack Iacon, he came under attack from secret Starscream agent Sandstorm, who succeeded in destroying the Void Scepter. Freed from Bludgeon's control, Trypticon teleported the insane pretender in front of his mouth and vaporized all the cybernetic samurai's limbs. Unfortunately, Bludgeon's carcass was salvaged by Starscream and put him to work on a new Void Scepter. It was at that point that Bludgeon began talking about the return of his master. After he pushed the boundaries of his house arrest just a little bit too far by having Slug attack his fellow Autobots, Starscream destroyed the new Void Scepter. Stupidly enough, however, the Chancellor of Cybertron saw fit to repair Bludgeon and send him back out into the galaxy under his own authority. Starscream realized that all evidence pointed to something big occurring out in the universe at large, and given the difficulties the Council of Worlds had every step of the way, the former Seeker decided to take matters into his own hands, yet again. Considering the fact that every backroom deal he'd ever made and every secret project he'd undertaken had eventually and consistently bitten him in the rare afterburners, it should come as no surprise to, well, anyone, that this plan failed. Bludgeon was sent out by Starscream to unite all the ragtag Decepticon remnants in the galaxy into a single fighting force capable of defending Cybertron. It seemed as though the ragtag groups and the individuals kept in touch via an elaborate communication network. That network ended up being how Bludgeon gathered together his troops into the Decepticon Vengeance Division, or DVD. It's important to note that both Starscream and Shockwave thought that they held Bludgeon's true loyalty at this point, neither aware that the unstable scientist had already devoted himself to Unicron. When the Chaos Bringer arrived and began consuming Cybertronian colonies, Starscream ordered the DVD to engage, using a plan proposed by Bludgeon. Can you guess what happened next? That's right. Bludgeon's plan was a ruse to bring the entire DVD to Unicron so it could forcibly convert the Armada via exposure to Regenesis Ore 11 into monstrous heralds. The transformed fleet and the World Ender, along with the ancient Titan spacecraft Nemesis that stood in for one of Unicron's eyes, teleported to Cybertron, where Autobot and Council forces had amassed their own armada to defend the planet. When Unicron used its connection to Nemesis to absorb its transformation cog and converted to robot mode, well, that was the end of Cybertron. The Pyrrhic battle ended when Windblade convinced the Visionaries to use their magic to warp the remaining Cybertronians from Cybertron and its immediate airspace to Earth. Yes, Cybertron was destroyed and the Autobots routed, but the DVD Armada had lost most of its capital ships. Unfortunately, Bludgeon's World Sweeper survived and jumped to Jupiter, where it destroyed Soundwave's Sanctuary Station of peaceable Decepticons. It was at that point Shockwave, having devised a plan to destroy Unicron using the mystical Talisman MacGuffin, a doomsday object created by an ancient Attilan scientist for retribution against Cybertronians, discovered he no longer held any power over Bludgeon, but only after he'd given the insane Unicron Herald the location of the Talisman on Earth. Bludgeon set course for Earth to capture the Talisman, as it was the only thing capable of stopping his new apocalyptic master, only to face Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp flying from the planet on an intercept course. The insane Herald was simply tickled that the Seekers thought themselves powerful enough to present any challenge to his ship and ordered one Structor out to kill the trio, which ended up being precisely what the Council of Worlds had predicted he would do, as Metroplex and Trypticon space-bridged directly in front of the World Sweeper and disgorged the final defensive line of Cybertronians, humans, Space Knights, Dire Wraiths, and everything in between. As the DVD/Unicron Armada faced the combined might of the Council of Worlds, the Seekers slipped by, carrying Optimus Prime, RC, and the Talisman to Unicron. The Decepticon forces were quickly wiped out, leaving just Bludgeon's World Sweeper descending to the eastern seaboard of North America, with a sizable battle still taking place on board. Monstructor was obliterated by the combined might of Superion and a revitalized Victorian, while Bludgeon came up against his old foe Slag. The two fought as the ship continued its fall to Earth, until the irascible Dinobot succeeded in destroying Bludgeon's third, or was it fourth or fifth, Void Scepter, causing the insane Decepticon turned Herald of Unicron to lose control of the massive ship, and it crashed into America's White House, killing both combatants. Unicron itself was consumed by the black hole at the center of its being shortly thereafter, thanks to the efforts of Optimus Prime in infraspace, who sacrificed himself to put the Attilan enmity to rest. Well, that was a lot, wasn't it? Here we are with the Titan of Destruction, the weird brainchild of two of Cybertron's most devious, evil minds, Jaxus and Shockwave, and I guess you could say Thunderwing as well. But we are here, and I gotta say, I really like this figure. Even as a repaint, I don't collect a lot of repaints, retools. If I have all three Seekers, that's kind of the big deal. I think the only collection of original G1 Seekers I have, the original trio, Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp, I think the only version of those I own are the Classics version of the mold. Just because usually I don't see the point in buying three of the same thing unless I'm really, really beholden to the character. And for the Seekers, I like Starscream, and I like Sky... I used to really like Skywarp, but I'm much more of a Thundercracker person now because there's so much more to his character now than Skywarp. But yeah, now I have a Bludgeon, which I think is only the second Bludgeon I own. I think I have the Hunt for the Decepticons Bludgeon, which was a repaint retool of the Megatron toy, or was... No. That was repainted into Banzaitron. Okay, I'm sorry. It was repainted into Banzaitron, which I do not have. So I typically only buy one of a mold, unless, like I said, I'm beholden to the character. For me to actually have both Bludgeon and Tarn is kind of a big deal. But I think that they do enough with this mold to justify it. I'm really happy that I picked him up. He looks really nice. I really like the new paint applications and how they change the look of the figure. It's amazing just what moving the fusion cannon to his back does. It almost makes you, like any good repaint retool, or combination thereof, it makes you think that perhaps this is what it should have been in the first place. So, I think this succeeds very well. So, Bludgeon and Tarn. Here you go. You see them together now. And, yeah, I mean, you could tell they're the same mold, but they have completely different feels. And I think that's really just down to paint applications, colors. Even down to this being an actual black rather than a really dark gray. I think that this is a worthy toy to pick up. Even if you already have Tarn. I was lucky to pick this up fairly cheap, and by fairly cheap I mean less than its suggested retail price when it came out, which is amazing in this day and age. I don't even think there were any superficial defects with the box, and I mean obviously he's complete. I think I may have paid more for Tarn than I did Bludgeon. Maybe. I mean, I know I paid more for Cyberverse Tarn because that's a whole multi-pack. And I bought that in stores when it came out, so that's not even part of the run. But, bloop. Thank you very much for joining me for Tarn-Adjacent Tuesdays, or Tarn-Adjacent Tuesday, rather. I hope that this has been interesting and educational, and entertaining for you. I'm really enjoying doing it. I hope maybe you got something out of the lore. You let me know. I'd really like to know whether I should do, you guys feel like I should do the in-depth lore that I've been doing for IDW, or just go back to doing kind of like standard glossy lore. I mean, it's kind of difficult now because a lot of the figures that I'm doing have never appeared in animation, really. So I can't like go deep diving into voice actors and like different appearances in different media if they only have like one toy kind of thing. Not like Sea Spray or Gears or Brawn or the Battle Chargers. So you let me know if the lore is worthwhile, if you're getting something out of it, if you like it or if you don't like it. Let me know in the comments or drop me a message just in general. I really do love this whole... I love IDW. It's probably my favorite Transformers continuity, maybe aside from G1 and Transformers Prime. Transformers Prime I thought was really good. It is not aged well. I think some of the lore building is excellent, mainly because it came right out of the Aligned universe, and I really love the War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron games. And I read the novels, and there are significant issues there. But I think IDW presents the most well-rounded continuity because it goes so in-depth in world building and goes so in-depth in its story and the way Cybertron functions, and then the political aspects when it becomes the League of Nations almost, and it's just so much more interesting to see so many different perspectives on the characters that you know and love. You let me know. I'd love to know. Do you think I should do something bigger or something more with IDW? Do you think I should start reviewing the comics? Do you think that I should start doing more like deep dive lores? If you do like this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you know when the next video drops, and share it if you want to. In earlier videos, I had said that Tarn Tuesday was going to be 4 videos, and this is the 4th video. And Tarn Tuesday will be continuing with at least one more episode. We'll see. So thank you very much for joining me. That's really all I got to say. I've been Phantom. This has been The Shelves Have Eyes. Have a good day, y'all.
Transformers, defenders of truth, robots who fight in disguise. Transformers, when the battle is through, only the strong will survive. Till all I want, unknown soldiers.